One more thing worth mentioning here about Creepy Edge. Hi everyone, Ryer here with another video for you. Today, I want to quickly give my thoughts on the Under Night 2 beta that happened this past weekend. I played my main, Chaos, for almost all of the beta, and accrued approximately 300 matches combined, online and offline. I will have a more in-depth video next week on my thoughts on how they changed Chaos in this version, but for this one, I just want to give general impressions on the beta and explain some of the new stuff that they added. Before we get started, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help me out a lot. Also, this is commentary on a beta version of a game that is yet to be released. There is a chance that any or all of what I talk about today can change before the game actually drops in January. Okay, so what did our friend Kamone do in this new version of the game? I was thinking about how I would describe it, and in some ways I would say he did a lot, and in other ways I want to say he didn't do much at all. Because the great thing is, this still feels like Under Night. Depending on which character you play, you might feel like you're getting a version of Uniclear that just has playable netcode. Many of the cast did get new moves, and some new systems are in place, but at the end of the day, this is still Uni, and I'm happy for that. Talking about new systems, let's go ahead and break down what's new in this version of the game. I'll start by talking about the new defensive mechanic, Creeping Edge. Creeping Edge is performed with a diagonally down forward input, also known as 3, and the D button. Upon activation, your character will glow blue and roll a set distance through any strikes that your opponent uses. You gain some grid if you successfully pass through an attack of an opponent, and at the end of the roll, you're able to block any further attacks your opponent can throw out. However, in my experience, if you press a button after rolling, you are minus, and you will often get punished for pressing. Also worth noting, at any point during the Creeping Edge, you can be thrown, and you will be grid broken if the Creeping Edge is still active when the throw comes out. This feels a lot more like an escape defensive option rather than an outright counterplay option. It's an alternative to shield that can reposition you or get you out of the corner, but it is definitely, at least at this point, not something to be spam. I look forward to seeing what moves can give a guaranteed Creeping Edge escape, or maybe can even be punished with a successful Creeping Edge in neutral. I can see the potential here, but with the limited time that I had in the beta, I didn't get to apply it too much in my matches. One more thing worth mentioning here about Creeping Edge, and sorry, I don't actually have a lot of good footage for it, is that some characters have a Creeping Edge that actually puts them airborne instead of being on the ground. Because they're airborne, they can't be thrown to punish their Creeping Edge. However, once the Creeping Edge finishes, you can hit them with any grounded normal that would be air unblockable and punish them if you bait it properly. So when the game comes out, be sure to check which characters you need to be throwing when you see the Creeping Edge, and which ones you need to be waiting and doing a delayed ground button when you see the Creeping Edge. I like the Creeping Edges in the game. I think it gives characters like mine who don't have a reversal option another way to defend themselves in pressure. And I also think it adds another layer of strategy to your defense and can help you get out of some sticky situations if you use it the right way. The other new system introduced into this game is Celestial Vorpal. If you win the grid cycle with 6 or more grid blocks, you immediately gain all 12 grid blocks and a 30% damage bonus for the duration of your Vorpal. This mechanic is a lot less interesting, in my opinion, than Creeping Edge is. You may have seen the meme clips online of people touch of deathing with Celestial and Veil off, and that's all fine and good. But what I don't like about this more so is that once you've earned Celestial, you will win grid and win cycle for the rest of the game if you want to. It is really hard to lose a 12 grid block lead. This, combined with the damage bonus that you get, means that playing for cycle is arguably way more important in this game than it was in previous versions. I'll talk about this a lot more in my Chaos video, but one thing of note here is my 2 new moves are both force functions. That means they cost grid to use if I haven't already won Vorpal, and it feels like there's a little bit of strategic dissonance there. I want to use my new moves, but I also can't really sacrifice the grid. Celestial is a nice way to reward players for playing to the cycle, sure, but I think the fact that you also win all the future cycles might be a little much for this game's system. It's flashy and fun, and the damage is great, sure, but I think this may end up dissuading or discouraging beginner players who really can't play for the cycle once they lose it once, and get severely punished for the rest of the match. I look forward to seeing how Celestial is used in high-level play, but I think it shouldn't be so punishing for a single big loss of cycle, particularly, again, for newer players who are trying to pick up the game and will be losing cycles to this degree. Besides the two outright new mechanics, there were a lot of minor changes given to the game as well. For example, grid thrust is now forward A, B, and C and only costs 100 meter, rather than requiring you to grid break yourself or losing cycle to use it and having a much harder input. I like this change. I think this will actually lead to more grid thrusts in matches and will actually allow it to be a strategic choice that you can use rather than an extremely expensive last resort. Similarly to Creeping Edge, a character without a reversal option needs options like this in this version of the game. Another input change is one A and D, or crouch block. A and D now gives you throw instead of a blue shield. This is huge as it takes away one of the easiest option selects in the game. 1 AD used to throw tech or shield depending on what your opponent did. But now it also makes chain shifting in block strings a lot harder, as if you're trying to mash that in a gap, you're going to get a whiff throw instead of a chain shift and get punished for it. I like this change as it makes you think a lot more on your defense, which I always think is a good thing. But it does make things a little harder for those who are enfranchised in the game, as you're going to have to rewire your brain to not hit that command if you're trying to block. Veil Off startup is faster in this version and cannot be held. That makes it a bit harder to punish and a bit better as a reversal option. As a trade-off for that, it no longer removes Vorpal State from an opponent when done in a combo. So you used to be able to Vorpal Strip your opponent, as it was called. You'd do a combo, you would end in Veil Off, it would be a hard knockdown for them, they would lose Chain Shift. It was a horrible situation. That is out of the game now, which I think is a healthy change for the game in general, and I will absolutely take a buff to Veil Off to trade that off. Another thing I noticed is that if you have Vorpal State and you use an EX move, you actually get 25 of your 100 meter back pretty much immediately. So now everyone has a little mini Hilda Vorpal trait, and meter is a lot more abundant in this version of the game. I will say this, in conjunction with some of the above changes mentioned, like Celestial, and the removal of the chain shift meter cap, you can now get up to 240 meter for 12 blocks of grid, means you can do a lot more damage and have a lot more meter in this version of the game. There are very few timeouts in this version of the game. I know the old meme was Under Night X timeout, right? It was a slow game, there were a ton of timeouts, and that was absolutely true and clear. I'm not seeing that in this version. People are exploding in this version of the game. So that all amounts to a lot of gameplay changes, but I still think this keeps enfranchised players ahead of the game coming into this new version, rather than flipping everything on its head and coming up with a completely new game. I can't say for sure if this is balanced yet. That's going to take a longer amount of time to develop. But new tools feel strong and purposed, and if you had an interest in earlier titles and never picked them up, I highly encourage you to pick this one up. If you want to get started now, you can even play some Uniclear to get a feel for the combos and systems of the game. I assure you, not that much is changing, and those skills will transfer forward. The games I played in the beta for UNISC with the rollback netcode implementation were amazing. In over 250 online games, I had a single-digit number of games where the connection was noticeably impacted. And I would say only 1 or 2 of those affected the end result of the game. The connection is actually quite good in this version of the game, and I felt like I could play the way I wanted to. Once the new game comes out, there will be a place to play and practice, and I know this community is going to dive right in, as I've seen mostly positive responses across the board to this beta. So, where does that leave us? There's a lot of new systems to assess, and there's a lot of balance changes to wrap our head around, but at the end of the day, we are playing Under Night, and we can play it online, so it's great. I'm in a really good spot with this game right now. I cannot wait until January to dive in and play this game, and I hope you'll join me. I hope you liked this overview. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned to this channel for another video next week where I'll get more into the weeds and talk particularly about my character, Chaos, and what changes you can expect from him and what they mean for his overall game plan. You can also check out the live tab of this channel if you want all the raw footage of the beta from when I was playing. That's over 10 hours of gameplay, as well as other streams that I do from time to time. Thanks again for watching. Be good to one another, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.